work with people who have been addicts and you're arresting them because they're involved in petty theft or larceny and they're spending time in jail, and you're seeing those cases increase in the same number that you see cases increase of people dying from substance addiction and substance abuse and overdoses, that affects a great deal of the way you work. You will hear it, and it becomes almost a rote phrase from prosecutors and law enforcement officials, but we are very much coming to believe that we will not arrest our way, we will not prosecute our way out of this problem. This epidemic will not go away because we catch the one person or the group of people that are bringing heroin into our country. That is a very important part of my job. It's something I believe in a great deal, is that we need to stop the flow of illicit drugs and lawful drugs that are diverted. It's a big part of what I do, but it's only one part of what will help this stop. Prosecution is one thing. Prevention is another. And that's something we very much need to get in front of because of where we've come, treating addicts as criminals, coming to a point where we need to treat addicts as people suffering from a disease. It means that we need to see them where they are, especially when they're in custody. A big part of what you'll hear here in terms of people who are overdosing, people who are gaining through their tolerance over time, is that they will come to be involved with the criminal justice system. Oftentimes families that suffer from this, and addicts do not suffer alone. This is a family problem because your parents will suffer more than you do in certain ways. And the family might find out because of the first involvement of law enforcement. The first person who might explain to them what's going on with their children might be the police officer that's involved with their arrest, or the person that responds to their home, if God forbid that child is overdosing at home. In Michigan in 2015, there were 107 prescriptions for opioids given for every 100 people. Think about that for a second. In our state, there were more opioid scripts written than there were people living here. Man, woman, child. And that amount, that delivery, is not because we have so many doctors that aren't doing their job the right way. And as Dr. Detman says, when things came about, it's because people are seeking these drugs. And what the addicts do, when they are not yet to the stage they're willing to turn to the cheaper form of heroin, is they will doctor shop. And they will go from one doctor to another. They will find some doctors who are less rigid about their procedures in terms of how they give out the opioids, but these addicts are very, very driven to get them. And they are not the only people that are driven to get these drugs. We are getting a great deal more heroin in this state than we have had before. It is much more lucrative to sell it, and they can move it to different areas of the state, especially rural areas, and those who are willing to sell it illicitly will profit a great deal more. So if we look at prevention in terms of education, that's something my office has been involved in. All the people at this table, to some degree or another, have been involved in education at different times. We need to get to younger and younger students in schools and parents of those students, just like this group is doing this evening. This is a great effort for exactly that reason, to educate the community, to see that it is a problem before children get to an age where someone might offer them a little pill and say that it's going to make them feel better and they don't know what it is. Before parents are at a point where they don't recognize why their children are listless for certain days and they're not behaving the way they used to, or maybe they're just behaving like a teenager, even though their grades aren't going down. Before this problem hits in families and households, we need to make the community that we are a part of much more a part of it. Because denial hits in more than just the way where the addict wants to deny that they have an addiction. Denial hits in the way that you look around your community and you say, that's not going to happen in my school, that's not going to happen on my block, that's not going to happen here. The data is very clear. This has happened to every community. It's sports injuries. It's people with hip and knee replacements in their mid-40s and 50s who get addicted to these drugs. Any access point to oxycodone or to hydrocodone is going to be an access point to people where they could become addicted. The reason for that is because, and I think the doctors here will tell you, the chemical effect of these drugs is no different from heroin to begin with. It's exactly the same thing is happening to people. There's a time when you need pain treatment where that is appropriate, but it is not for ongoing pain treatment if there is another avenue to stop it. And those sorts of things are going to continue to get people addicted through the painkillers, and that availability is going to continue to get kids who don't see the same stigma they see to injecting a drug to having a pill given to them. The stigma that addicts feel that causes them to be criminals, that causes our communities to look at them in many ways and say your behavior is not something that's acceptable, and yet we're going to see that as a moral choice, that stigma needs to be gotten rid of. And a lot of the law enforcement that you meet, who are the people who are on the ground that are bumping into these people and their families as they suffer, a lot of them are coming to that realization as well. We are, all of us at this table, very hopeful that the number of overdose deaths you see in Kent County and in Michigan as a whole goes down. But one thing to aid that is that in the state of Michigan, if you make a phone call, say you are with someone and you're both using heroin and your friend overdoses, if you make a phone call to get treatment with that friend, so long as you are just using and you do not have with you a distribution amount of drugs or any other felony or crime that you're committing, you will not be prosecuted for being involved in that, taking someone to the hospital, calling the EMTs, calling 911. If you do what you can to resuscitate them, you'll be in good shape. If you are a user and you end up in the hospital, you cannot be prosecuted for possession of the drug that they find in your system when they find out what's going on. And that's a change in the law to encourage people to make those reports, to bring them to ERs. We're hoping that there are more and more ER visits, there are more and more visits by ambulances, because people won't be afraid of running into me at the end of their day and becoming my witness or becoming my defendant. They shouldn't be, if they're just trying to help their friend. And we saw too many cases of drug overdoses where people were not only overdosing from a drug, but they were abandoned by their friends for fear of what was going on and what they might be caught with. But if you find yourself dealing with someone who is dealing with this issue, I encourage you never to listen to the word no. If you keep going and keep finding a way, we need to find more avenues that way is introduced when when intervention can be done, when law enforcement comes to your home, when the EMT comes by, when someone ends up in an ER and they talk to a doctor, they're not just let go because they're well enough and they don't want to stick around. They're referred for treatment even if they're not ready for it. There's good data that says that sort of referral will get people well sooner, will get people into recovery sooner, even if they don't think they're ready or they're resistant to it at that time. Just the exposure will get them down a road that maybe leads them to a point where they can get to recovery personally. Just to give you a sense of what's going on and how much we're seeing that, fentanyl is at least 80 to 100 times more potent than morphine. Okay, so that makes it at maybe 50 times more potent than heroin. 2 milligrams to anyone without a tolerance of fentanyl. 2 milligrams, not a gram, 2 milligrams of fentanyl would kill anyone, average person with no tolerance. Carfentanil, the elephant tranquilizer that Dr. Start mentioned, that we have found in several different areas in the course of our investigations, is 10,000 times more potent than morphine. So 100 times more potent than fentanyl. And carfentanil they literally use it on large game. The only place that's supposed to have it in Grand Rapids is the John Ball Zoo, and that's for the big cats. People are ordering that from dark websites, from different labs in China, a couple labs in Mexico. Our partners at DEA tell us they've tracked up to 100 such labs, and there are many that they don't know about. That is going to be available, and we can't stop it from coming in because it can come in such small portions we can't detect it if it comes in a mailed package. And people who are suffering from addiction will look for the strongest thing they can find. When I do my cases and people are doing investigations, when we hear phone calls, that's what they're after. That's the danger that people have. So I encourage you to keep going and try to find a way for prevention for those communities that you serve. Thank you.